Welcome to our 2024 Directors Close-Up Spirit Awards edition. I'm Maria Raquel Bossi, Senior Director of Education and International Initiatives at Film Independent. Before we start, I want to take a moment to thank all the partners that make Film Independent's important work possible. Thank you to this year's incredible supporters of the Directors Close-Up, the Directors Guild of America, SAG Indie, and IMDb Pro. And thank you to our 2024 Film Independent Spirit Award supporters, principal partners IMDb Pro and Lavazza Coffee, and official partners Bullet Frontier Whiskey, Fiji Water, Petit Flou Champagne, and Stella Artois. We so appreciate your support and devotion to the independent film community. Today, we're joined by this year's John Cassavetes Awards nominees who are going to tell us how they made every penny count to bring their story to the screen for less than $1 million. Actually, this category was films made for less than $500,000 for almost 30 years. And it was just a few years ago that we thought, okay, maybe that's kind of like too much. But maybe the filmmakers today made it for less than that. We'll find out. Maybe they don't want to disclose their budget, but I'm curious to see how they pulled it off because these are all incredible films. So here with us are Babak Jalali, director of Fremont. Welcome, Babak.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. What time is it for you and where are you joining us from?
I'm currently in London and it's 8 p.m., 8:05.
Okay, not too bad. You're just
No.
missing dinner, right? And then next up, we have Marisa Maltz. She's the director of The Unknown Country. And Marisa, I love your background. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in South Dakota right now, and it's 1 o'clock and snowy out.
I know it's a lot of snow there. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And next up, last but not least, we have Franklin Rich. He's the director of The Artifice Girl. Hi, Franklin.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And so where are you?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. We actually had a relatively chilly couple of days, but now we're back up to like 80 degrees. So that's how our winter's going.
Oh my God. Yeah, we have a very diverse climate and geographic panel today. And last but not least, I'm really pleased to introduce our moderator. She's freelance journalist and film critic Lisa Kennedy. She writes for the New York Times and Variety, amongst many other publications. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And thank you for doing this. And congratulations to all of you. And thank you. And take it away, Lisa.
And so I shall. Can you hear me, everyone? Wonderful. Okay. So you all look like $1 million, but your films look like they were made for a lot more, and yet we're celebrating you for making them for less. So I don't know if you want to talk about your budget, but I do want to talk about, with each of you, to start off with, when you envisioned your film, did you have a budget? And is it similar to the budget that you made the film for, or is it radically different than what you made the film for? And anyone can chime in, or I can pick on you. It's your choice. Franklin, because you laughed at my bad joke. Oh, Babak, no, he won. He was.
No, I said pick on us. I didn't say pick
Oh,
on
good.
you.
All right. So I will pick on Franklin after all, just to begin with. So because it's such a, you're the first, you're the directorial debut guy.
That's right.
Other filmmakers, so that makes it, I think, especially interesting for some of our guests to talk about.
Yeah, well, thank you. Our kind of circumstance was really weird and interesting, and I would never recommend anybody else do it this way. But we kind of knew that we were never going to be able, not having made a feature before, we kind of knew we weren't going to be able to get any kind of like sizable budget for our first project. And we kind of it was right at like the beginning of COVID in the spring of 2020. This idea came about of like, let's just write something that you could make for like the smallest amount of money possible, right? And so we ended up with a story that was 4 characters and 3 locations, most of those, I mean, all three of those locations were one room. And so that's how we kind of started. And even still, we knew that we would still need money to make that happen. And we didn't have any kind of resources like that. We had a lot of equipment that we had acquired. We had a lot of talent nearby that we loved working with. But we didn't have any money to make it. So our idea was, well, if we take the first third, there's 3 acts in our film. If we take the first third of that film, and there's no like art direction in that act, and so we just raise a tiny, small, like what was essentially like less than a tenth of our overall budget, and raise that amount, which was practically nothing, just enough to pay the cast and crew, and then film that entire first third for practically nothing. And then since I was also editing the film, I took that footage, 5 days of shooting, which ended up being about 30 to 40 minutes of film, cut it together, and then sort of packaged it almost as a proof of concept. I had a little video of the cast, and we were like, hey, this is our film, Artifice Girl. Here's how much we need to finish it. Hope you enjoy. And so we sent that out along with the script. And that was, I think, kind of why the producers that we ended up working with said it was a no-brainer. The fact that we had 1/3 of the film already done and like ready to, and it looked, decent and everything. And then when they realized like how much we needed, it was a pretty obvious green light for them. But so that's the way that we do it. That we did it for this project. We just shot almost half of our film. But yeah, other than that, like our budget was always going to be tiny. And even raising that was like a daunting experience, but we were just committed to it. And I feel as though one of my people that worked on the film always says that we willed the film into existence, and that is kind of what it felt like.
Right. Babak?
Yeah. We didn't, I mean, me and my co-writer, Carolina Cavalli, we wrote the script. I had no idea what it was going to cost when we wrote it. And once we found out that this is serious, we're going to move forward and make this film, then budgets were made and things like that. And I knew what it was, and I had to stick to that, obviously. So there was some element of, give and take, or like, keeping something, removing things, adding things, in order to fit within the money that was available. But I must say, in defense of actually, how should I say, with gratitude to my producers, the money that was raised for the film, they really went out of the way to make sure that I could make the film that I had written and not too much. So finding creative ways in which to actually bring what was on paper onto film without kind of sacrificing too much. And for that, I'm grateful. I mean, I think I think that I also edited the film myself. So I knew that was going to be the case all along. So that idea of, oh, we need to raise, for example, X amount for post-production or Y amount, the pressure of that was kind of taken away as well, because yeah, I was going to edit it myself. And I think, yeah, it was just, there was, let's say, a creative, Rachel Fong, who was the main producer on the film. She was very, without me feeling it, like, I don't know how to express this, without me feeling the pressure of it, she was very good at keeping costs down. And I also didn't hear a lot of what was the noise that was going on in the background to make this happen, in order to be able to, yeah, make it for this limited budget.
I love that. And there's things that both of you have already said that I want to return to. But Marisa, what about you?
So I started making this film in 2017. And we probably didn't get like any actual funding in until like early 2020. We got $15,000 worth of grants over the course of 1 year from Austin Film Society, who was pretty much the only anyone who believed in the film. And it was basically just me, Lily, and our DP for the majority of shooting. And we, you know, I would raise 5,000 from AFS. We'd do a shoot. We'd wait 3 months, raise like, you know, $3,000 from some donations and come back and shoot again. That was the majority of production until we had about 90% of the film, until the Texas portion with Big Bend. And then finally we had a film to show to people and was able to get in some investment. But the production was, almost all of production was probably, I would guess, about like 40. I mean, so insane. Like, you know, no one believed in the project or Lily or anything we were doing, but we really believed in each other. And so that's pretty much all we needed was, you know, this small group of people that just loved what we were doing. And you know, and it was definitely hard, but in retrospect, like we made 100% of the film is 100% what we wanted to make. And that, you know, it gives me goosebumps when it like that's, and so we can't complain about it because that's why the film is what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty special. Babak, you mentioned your producer, and I think one of the relationships that certainly the filmmakers watching understand to some degree, but people like me are always kind of like forgetting to sort of, you know, and all of a sudden they get like awards and stuff, and you're like, oh yes, producers, what do they do? And what do they do for you? But could you talk a little bit about your relationship to your producers or to your producers?
Yeah, I mean, ours was very peculiar because I started this project with a dear friend who had produced my second feature film, which was also in the Bay Area, Radio Dreams. And we decided we wanted to make another film together. So we started developing the project together. We got a grant from the SF Film, San Francisco Film, the rating grant for development. And what happened was we were supposed to shoot this in 2020, but then the pandemic hit and everything lay dormant for a while. And then the producer I mentioned, the Marjana Morimi, unfortunately fell very ill. So with the other producers, we decided to get the project going again, and it happened very quickly. Unfortunately, she passed away 10 days before we started shooting, so like deep in production. So, but with the other producers, I mentioned Rachel, and there's Sudnia Shroff and George Rush and Laura Wagner. I think the relationship was, they also wanted, I don't know, everyone there was the crew, heads of department, producers, myself, of course. We wanted to make it, particularly for Marjana, who didn't make it. So I don't know, like, you know, usually like whenever there is a sense of friction, where there's arguments about to kick off or where there's disputes kind of potentially coming to the fore. In this instance, I don't know, it really didn't happen. And I think that was because in the spirit the film was made in, with that sense of, I don't know, loss that we were feeling at the time. So it just ended up being, I mean, again, I'm very lucky because the other producers were so determined to get the film made. And and I know, and I think this is one of the benefits of making a film for this budget, is that as a director, you get a lot of freedom, which diminishes the higher the budget gets. So in this instance, there's, yeah, it was tough. It was very hardcore at times, but it also, you know, you're at ease thinking, okay, but this is the film I actually want to make. You know,
right.
Which may sound arrogant and it may sound narcissistic in a way because, oh, I'm making the film I want to make. But I'm not saying, you know, you're a dictator telling everyone, no, this is the film I'm going to make. You have to do this. Not at all. It was just not having to veer off your original intention in order to satisfy certain things which, you don't feel is correct to satisfy.
Right. Franklin, did you make the film you wanted to make?
Absolutely. I think we kind of went in with sort of we kind of managed our expectations initially and said, because we know we're not going to be able to get a lot of money, because we're going to be starting to film in COVID times, that this was going to be a film that relied heavily on dialogue between just a handful of characters. And then we kind of had to approach it and say, how do you make that interesting? How do we make one location dialogue interesting? So I spent a lot of time researching and seeing how other films did that successfully. So I'm sure like there's maybe a version of the film out there that has like $10 million and it's a globe-trotting social network kind of like epic, but that's not the film that I wanted to see. I wanted to see if there was a way to do the film as more of a chamber piece, to keep it kind of grounded, to make it feel a little more claustrophobic. And that just it's sort of a lot of these creative insights kind of almost they become birthed out of your constraints, which I that's why I love independent film. I think the essence of being an independent filmmaker is being able to perceive obstacles as opportunities for creativity. And so for me, yeah, I wouldn't change anything about the film. I love that it's as small as it is, with as small of a cast, with as small of a team as it has. And I agree. Like I think you get a lot of freedom to kind of explore and do more interesting things when you don't have to answer to in more investors,
Right.
so that's and I also saw that someone in the Q&A asked if we went back and reshot anything after we got the money, and no, everything that you see in that first 30 to I think it's 30 something minutes, all of that first act was originally what we shot with no money. We just wanted to try and make something that felt like it could play in theaters, or as like as a real film.
That's really great. And what Franklin just did, I would encourage Marissa and Babak to do too. If you guys see something in the Q&A that sort of inspires you to like chime in a different way, and it seems like it's off of what you've already been saying, by all means. I mean, we'll have a Q&A, everybody, at the end of our conversation, but at the same time, we wanted to keep it a conversation. So we're happy to invite you all in as well. So just in case you see something, you're like, oh, that's good. And then I could just sit back and really just listen. But I love the idea of, first of all, there's sort of two different things. One is like money changes everything. So more money means more sort of people maybe making you responsible for your creative choices. So then less money sounds like a sweet spot potentially for creativity. But that also sounds like besides listening to you, Franklin, and going, oh my gosh, indie film is the parkour of, of like, creativity, because you're like, here's an obstacle, let me like make it pretty. Here's another one, let me flip over. But I guess I think, when is that nonsense? Like, when is it nonsense because you're too squeezed? And when is it really true that you, in being agile and nimble, creatively, sort of see some opportunity to do something that even surprises you, that like sort of uses muscles and like sort of creative ingenuity that you didn't even sort of know that you had, but sort of appreciate and sort of stick with. I mean, the interesting thing, Babak, is that you actually have 4 features. This is your 4th feature, by understanding. And that means that sort of Cassavetes sometimes can feel like, first-time feature filmmakers, because almost by necessity and investment, people aren't going to give you like Marvel style money, and there's lots of things in between your Cassavetes budget and Marvel style money, right? But how does when is that thing that we say, which is it became better for having to do it scrappier, true for you? And give me an example. And when was it like, oh, you know what, that may have been true for this part of it, but for this part of it, it was a real pain? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it does. I think my previous film, well, the budget for that was, I would say, maybe 2.5 times what Fremont cost.
Mm-hmm.
And that was made with, the European public funding system. So we got money from different countries, and we had spending obligations. And that in itself is an absolute nightmare, because I sound ungrateful, but it's like you get free money to make a film. But well, what I'm saying is you have spending obligations in the sense of, for example, sometimes you're casting and the requirement is that particular cast member needs to be from a certain country, even though it doesn't fit with the story. Or you need to take a head of department from this country, whereas you really wanted to work with a head of department who's from another country. And so that in itself has those limitations. I felt like this from the moment I made my first film, which if I had, let's say, money to exist, to live, I would have no qualms making films with 7 people for next to zero money, money in a way, you know what I mean, just the budget wise, because like Franklin said, I mean, the to be able to, for example, veer off direction if something strikes you on the day without having to do checks and balances and asking questions and getting bogged down in that. When you see something, I don't know, an actor sitting off camera and you see their face and think, oh, it'd be amazing if I have take that as a shot for the film, even though it's not in the script, even though we haven't told everyone, and even though we haven't scheduled it. And I think you have those possibilities when it is much more, let's say, you're freestyling more. And I really enjoy making films that way. I mean, with all the craziness of Fremont, how limited we were in certain things, how much the days were intense, and how exhausting it was, how much more gray I got. All those things, I would, if I had, I don't know, won the lottery, or if I had sold a medical supplies business and had a lot of money to say, okay, I'm going to make films, that's how I would make films. And in a way, so, and like I said, this being my 4th film, it hasn't been a progression of, okay, bigger, 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 bigger. It was bigger, much bigger, and much smaller. And I have no idea what's going to be next, but and I'm dismissing the thing between this and Marvel's, that kind of,
I know, it's such an unfair
middle ground. I know that people have had amazing experiences on those type of films, and I think it just all depends on also who you work with and who you surround yourself with, as opposed to just strictly about budget.
I would say it's the number one thing is who you're surrounding yourself with. Like if you have a group of people that all really care for each other and respect each other as artists and are hyper talented, and your synergy is there's nothing like that. There isn't any amount of money that can buy that. And I think that that's truly, I see that somebody was asking about that as well. Like it's truly the people. Sorry, I think
I have a question for you, Marissa, and I love, Babak, that you brought this up when you were talking about how you have the flexibility if you see something on set that inspires you, and you can go and you can do that. And I know that one thing that I loved about both of your films is that you keep sort of finding these characters in these places that you're exploring, and kind of sort of let the audience take a moment and kind of soak in who this person is and what they're all about. And even though they're kind of outside of the main focus of the narrative, like they still contribute to this beautiful world that you're building within your story. And so I love how you do that in Fremont. But I wanted to know, Marissa, with Unknown Country, how many of those people, like the guy who runs the shop, or the lady at the diner, how many of those people did you like meet along the way, or did you have a list of people that you were going to kind of touch on as you were telling, like, before you started production?
I was road tripping a lot through these areas, and I met those people, kind of created the film for me, because I met them all as I was traveling at the diners and the gas stations and all that sort of, in all those travels. And so as I was meeting them, I wanted to make a story about meeting them. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. And so then we just started shooting with them in around 2017. But like, I mean, not a lot of people, but some more people are watching the film now than before. And it's getting a lot of, Nomadland comparisons and stuff like that. But we were, because of not having a lot of money, it was a very slow process, you know, for over a number of years, building those relationships like with the people and having, you know, them sort of share what kinds of stories they wanted to tell for the film. So so sorry, I think I veered off. But yeah, so those people were all friends before the film started and built it together with them.
That's awesome. But I do think that it ties back into this idea that I don't know if that's something that you could do maybe with a larger budget or with a bigger investment. If it was a bigger project, you know, it's a lot of that stuff. It may not have felt as honest and sincere.
In the time. Yeah, like having like not being on someone else's schedule to be able to say, okay, like, you know, like there isn't being able to take 6 months until another shoot or, you know, take time. Like there was no schedule. If anything, we just kept wanting to give ourselves more time to get to know what we were doing better. And yeah, I think that, yeah, I hope that, you know, you sort of feel how the closeness to all the people within the film because of that time. Like by the end of making the film, I mean, that I couldn't be closer with certain people within that family. I'm like the godmother of Jazzy now, the little girl. And like we couldn't, you know, like those were all built out of years of making a film, not being under constraints of, you know, making something in 6 months. I will say though, from before, I was going to say the one thing that if there's like well, what do you, like a tangible, what's good to have money for? The one thing that was like difficult for a long portion of time was just food, like not having somebody that would like go and get us food and everyone forgetting to eat. And also just because it was, you know, 3 people, like that's like a tangible thing that like you just don't, that you think, oh, of course every film shoot has food. But like when you're actually shooting with 3 people and the 3 people are working and one is acting and one's a DP, like
no craft services.
Yeah, so you know, like that seems like a no-brainer, but like it's actually something that like, yeah, was by the end something that we were like, you know what we need to make sure that we're fed. And so that's where like the money went, was just making sure that we had a producer on set for that last shoot in Big Ben when it was 110 degrees and that we had food there and that we weren't gonna pass out. So just a tangible thing of where money is important for. Sorry.
That's fairly existential. No, food would be.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Anyone.
And we had amazing catering, I must say.
Don't be bragging.
But like Sudhir Shroff, one of our other producers, so people who had brought in like a couple of different catering companies that basically in kind they were providing food in a way. So that was in that way that was very nice.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, in South Dakota, because of also some of the locations that we were shooting in, like figuring out, because we did just finish another film here and we did have a little more money this time, but even just figuring out catering in some of the areas that we're shooting in is also just challenging, you know. Sure. So that is yeah, like I think that for filmmakers that are looking to like how do you can get in kind, you know, people to come and cater and like you can kind of figure out that sort of stuff.
Yeah. One of the things
Can
I love
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
Just something about when we're talking about finances. I mean, there's also a thing where I don't know, like Marissa had Lily in her film, and I had Jeremy Allen White in a film. Now, of course, both of them have done tremendously well with their careers.
Kind of blown up.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, you know, you can make a film, of course, with Jeremy, which is gonna cost exponentially more than this film cost, but he didn't come into the film with expectations of, for example, that this is going to be, you know, a very expensive project, or that there's going to be lavish accommodation and food and this, that, the other. He knew exactly what the score was, that the lead actress had never acted before. She's a refugee from Afghanistan. He knew the everything about it, and he was totally, I mean, a complete angel, and without any, completely humble, completely down to earth. And now I'm not saying once he does a big film, he's a complete asshole. No, not at all. But it just becomes like, it is possible. For example, when you say small budget, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you can't work with people purely because your budget is too small. That makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, Marissa, you talk about your collaboration with Lily and just sort of, I think you saw probably the question that's just like, has Lily's nomination and sort of move towards the nomination, because that's really only yesterday, had an effect on people's interest in The Unknown Country. But the other part of that is, as a person who reviews films, I see wonderful actors come back to independent film because they know, similar to the way that you feel, they can do something that creatively speaks to them in a deeper way. And that doesn't mean that, mid-budget, whatever that is anymore, films don't have those possibilities and those sort of great sort of draws in terms of career, or that episodic doesn't do that because we see such great work. Jeremy being a fantastic example of that. But at the same time, yes, so casting, how did it work for all of you, and how satisfying is it to sort of be part of and bring someone in and see them do a kind of work that they aren't going to be able to do elsewhere in some ways, and know that they want to be there? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning, this was the kind of project which you can kind of hear from me talking about it, where we were either all going to fit in really well on that first shoot, or we were all never going to see each other again. And I mean, I think the first day, I think it was even within the first hour we were filming, and we got pulled over by a cop in Wyoming in our Cadillac. I had put fake license plates on, like drawn them on. Lily was driving. We had, all the equipment in the car. And Lily we were just dealing within the first hour with a cop being like, no, we swear we're making a movie in the middle of nowhere here with fake license plates, and, just ridiculous. But so, in those moments, like we all were, which I kind of said before, like Lily was an absolute dream to work with. She's an incredible human being, and she's in it for the art of it, and aside from that, we were all having fun and enjoying it. But we really both intuitively understood what we were trying to do, what we were trying to make. And she believed in it from that first day and didn't stop believing in it. And that's the kind of collaborator you want, whether they're Oscar nominated or not, like that's the human being you want to work with and make these types of projects with. And she took the project incredibly seriously over the course of those years. I mean, she didn't cut her hair for 3 years for the next time that we would have to come back and shoot the film. So, for us, this was a project that, I don't know, I can't start going like that because I get all emotional. That project means so much to all of us. But I think did that answer your question, that that's the kind of collaboration that you want to have with I forget the beginning.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, absolutely. Most of it's just about like, collaboration with, there's two kinds of collaboration I'm really interested in. One is like with your performers and your actors, and some of them are also producers and whatnot. But also there's the collaboration with your crew. But Franklin, there are moments, especially that first act, that feels so like theater in a certain way, but with the different visual intimacy that film brings. And so intimacy is another thing that I feel like is a little bit of a through line for all of these works in different ways. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I will say to also kind of segue back to what we were talking about, with the core cast of my film were 3 incredibly talented actors that I had been longtime friends with. David Gerard, who plays Amos, is one of my favorite actors of all time. Cinda Nichols is one of the best in Northeast Florida. And then Tatum Matthews, obviously, is a rising star. She's already got like Marvel deals and stuff because she's so great. And she was like 10 at the time that we were 10 years old when we were shooting that first act. So getting to work with them, yeah, I think that contributed to this sort of intimacy and this sort of like comfort. I would not have felt comfortable playing the role. I really was the honest truth is that I really only cast myself as that other character just because I felt comfortable knowing that we were going to be doing the scene together, and if I needed help, that they would be able to support me and give me feedback, and that I also had a really good trusting relationship with my director of photography. But that was so great about Acts 1 and Act 2, working with just your friends and just getting to play and experiment. And we had lots of Zoom rehearsals, so we really got to like have fun with it and make discoveries. And then for Act 3, we always kind of knew that we wanted to get like a great veteran actor to come in just for the final third. And we had a list of people, and Lance Henriksen was at the top of the list. We had no idea like if it was a pipe dream or what, but when we got producers and they said, yeah, we'll send it to Lance's people, and if he doesn't say, if his people say no, like we'll just make our way down the list. And sure enough, his representatives had said no, and so we started making our way down the list. And at a certain point on the list, one of our producers says, you know what, I've got a personal connection to Lance. Let's try and get the script in front of him. And because he hadn't read the script, and so we got the script in front of him, and he read it and then called me, and we talked for like 2 hours just talking about the character and the themes, and he was just so game for it. And so I feel as though with you guys as well, you guys have now these monumental superstars in your films, and I really want to stress that I think it's a testament to your stories, to your visions, and your abilities to connect with people, right? Actors want to challenge themselves. They want to act in projects that they're going to find fulfilling. And so I think any filmmakers out there that think, oh, it's impossible to get someone like that. Obviously it's to reach out to Hugh Jackman and just sort of bank on that. Maybe not the best idea, but definitely try and write something that you feel as though, you're going to cast a net, and you'll, if it resonates with the right person, and then you guys have like, you build a relationship off of that. I think that's what it really comes down to. It's not about having the next star, but instead about finding someone who understands your vision, and someone that you can effectively communicate with to achieve it. Which is, yeah, I think it's a really fun experience as a filmmaker to share your vision with someone like that, and then kind of realize like, wow, and I'm grateful to get to be now like a small part of Lance's legacy. And I know that like it's just the beginning for you guys, and I'm super excited to see what happens next.
I love that. So those are like sort of the relationships to the on-camera wonders. Who are the go-to people on your crew? How did you bring them together? Who have you worked with before? And what is what have you learned from them, and what did they sort of bring to the table that was beyond your imagination, beyond your dreams in a way? Babak, anyone?
Yeah, on Fremont, I had never worked with anyone. So crew and cast, everyone. This is my first time working with them. The one person that I had worked with, which I mentioned, who passed away, Marjan Morimi, but everyone else was new. But so I went through the process of talking to different people, different directors of photography, different production designers, different that kind of thing, and I mean, an incredible group of people. I mean, I guess the on set, my closest relationship with and people behind the camera was with Laura Valdeo, the cinematographer of the film. And this is, of course, the producers, Rachel, who was there every day as well. And so, yeah, but I think with Laura as well, because we made a decision to shoot the film in a particular way, in black and white.
Yeah.
And it was a thing where when I mentioned it to her, it was sort of like, I want to shoot this in black and white. I didn't expect to get the thumbs up from the producers, but first I spoke to Laura about it. I said, and she was very excited about it, and she was very supportive. So and that gave me the, let's say, the encouragement or confidence to go to the producer and say, hey, actually, I want to shoot it in black and white, expecting to be told, absolutely not. But again, grateful as I am, they agreed. They said go for it. But no, and I think there was even though I had never met any of the people before pre-production started, I became very close to everyone very quickly, and I think that was again because of the circumstance again that the film was made in. I think that had a huge part to play, and also I got lucky that everyone was very nice and kind. So it didn't turn into a battlefield or a war zone.
Great. Problem solving on set or in post. Ouch. Or in pre-production. It's like, yay, pre-production. On the set and post, ouch. Are there any examples that are sort of magical to you about like a problem that you feel that you solved in a way that you know you will sort of play it forward in another film, or that it really like something that made you feel like I really learned something in this moment in having to deal with this issue? And it can be anything, pretty much, is my opinion. It can be sort of with blind items, if it's confrontational. I know that you're not going to say it, but if you could kind of like pretend that you could sort of like give us, you know, like a blind item thing that sort of helps people navigate that'd be great. But I'm sure there's other just like logistical things, or like a moment or something like that, or even like a fiscal thing that you really did have to sort of think about. Just one thing that sort of has stayed with you as huge problem overcome.
I'll just quickly say that that's like where, when we did finally raise money, when most of the film was shot, we ended up spending a chunk of money at Skywalker to like make sure that the sound was what the quality of what the film should be. And there was a lot of VFX cleanup, and like the post budget, I mean, it was still small. Like we still made the film for under 300K total. But that's where the money went, was to just make sure, was because we had no money for production. So we really needed to clean up a lot of stuff for the final piece. And I do just really want to quickly shout out the people that I do work with, because I didn't answer that one, and I just love, I've always worked with the same people and I love them so much. I couldn't do anything without my DP, because I'm really bad at talking and explaining what I want, and he's able to just figure everything out that's in my head. So Andrew Hayjack is really talented, and I just wanted to say that because we've worked together forever, and I didn't answer that question. So
sorry, I should have given you a chance.
That's okay. I just like, with these projects, you don't have like, I wouldn't have anything without those people. There wouldn't be a film. So I just wanted to quickly say that. But sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
So. No. This is your, you know what, folks, this is your conversation. And the more you interrupt, the happier I think the people in the like sidebar are, because then they're learning more. But in that regard, I mean, you're a photographer.
I think I didn't study film and film school, I studied visual arts. So like the way that I think and talk when I'm on set is fun. It's comical. Like it's very funny. It's not very straightforward, and I'm not like a fantastic, communicator. This is exactly what we need to do, and I'm always like, well, should we do this, or what if we, I'm very like relaxed in that way. And so it's really the people around me that just like know me really, like the photographer point, like Andrew looked at my photographs that I was taking in the Midwest and all these places, and he was like, oh, okay, do you want the film to look like this? And I was like, yes. And he was like, okay, so then we use these lenses that are, Kawa lenses that match this 35 millimeter type of feeling. And I was like, exactly, so it's just like knowing those types of things. So
I have to think that the DP is a really important relationship. That's just all there is to it. Is the DP is like one of, I mean, they're all very important relationships, but that one seems, in terms of look and possibility and tone, to be one of the more engaged consistent and engaged relationships on on
your
set.
guy.
And
Yeah,
then
like,
you have the editor, so which is
yeah.
a different animal.
And
Unless
the
it's
editor
you.
as well. Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
Vonera Ting, who edited and did a lot of the story of With Unknown Country. I've worked with her as well on all of my projects, and they're just both very like they're very, what's the right, like they're much more story minded than me, and much more like, what's the point of what we're doing, what's the like, and I have a personality type that needs that, because I could like go off and film a flower for like 10 hours and forget that we're making a movie, and then just film Lily's face for another 10 hours. And so like I needed, you know, like the people around me to kind of be sort of guiding and building that.
Makes sense.
I would also like to shout out my director of photography. I completely agree that relationship is core to at least how I make films. I'm sort of on the other side. I'm very much sort of focused on story and pace and beats and tone and all of that. Whereas my DP is like just got the most brilliant eye for lighting, for color, for kind of design. And I'm so grateful to have worked with him for 10 plus years now. I mean, he's since high school. And he's amazing. His name is Britt McTammany. Big shout out to him. If you need to hire a damn good DP, he's amazing. He is in Jacksonville, but he's the best. And yeah,
I love that indie filmmaker Cassavetes were just trying to get our crew jobs.
Yeah.
They worked on our films
right
for so little.
on. That is the least you can
shamelessly.
Love it. No,
but I also want to quickly mention you were talking about the problem solving thing.
Yeah.
Which there were tons of experiences like that on set where as like with anybody who's done a first film, you learn so much from, you know, the mistakes you made or, you know, just kind of the problems you have to solve. But there's like so many stories, but the one that I will share is that we were rehearsing, it was act 2. So this was the first time we had funding. Right now, there was like a little bit of pressure. This was my first time with an actual budget, with actual producers. We were still in the same small location, the same small room with the same core team. It was just that now there was this additional pressure. So I was like, so like, you know, fixated on making sure we were doing everything pre-production wise, like correctly. We were having all these rehearsals, and I wanted to walk through the blocking with a couple people that had been gracious enough to volunteer to like just sort of walk through it on set. And the scene opens when a character throws open a door and enters the room. And during the rehearsal, the door was thrown open so violently that it punched a hole right in the wall. And it was one of those moments where this was like the day before you were supposed to start shooting, and like everything just kind of comes crashing down, and you start to like feel as though, you know, just because of this one accident, that like your film's a disaster, and that you know, the shot list is terrible, and I don't even know what to do in this moment, like visually. And this hole is in the wall. I'm like, I got to go to Home Depot and get the drywall patch and all this stuff. And of course, one of my friends who was the line producer was just like, yeah, I guess, man, like there's no way that could like just happen in the story, right? And it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh my God. So if that does happen, then the camera can tilt down. We see the reveal, he pulls it out, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, we've like eliminated 5 shots. That's great. Oh my God. And it was like one of those sort of, again, we're talking about like perceiving obstacles as opportunities. And there were so many little moments like that. And I think that also, you know, people say, oh, wow, how genius. But no, that was because I had surrounded myself with people who who just are positive and, you know, willing to problem solve, willing to like not let something trivial like get you down or back down from something like that. Just to keep moving forward, keep saying like, well, what if then, you know, and how would that maybe even be better than what we could have anticipated? So I think that's my little story about that.
Totally. I think that positivity, like taking any situation, because all of it's going to be hard and tough when you're dealing with very little money. That's just what you're signing up for. So it's just mostly about, you know, the outlook that you can have, I feel like, as you're doing it, and be able to, what was I just going to say? Oh, that cop that I was talking about that stopped me and I the first day. He's the cop in the movie. So after
Awesome.
the 4 hours, yeah, we were like, so if you watch the movie list, do you want to maybe be in the movie? And so it turned out to be really fun. So, you know, I mean, you don't want to get stopped.
Well, but like you probably have had like some of this happen, like, 3 films back, but what was there something that still like challenged like your agility in some way, but in a way that also felt like, oh yeah, I got this?
On this one, I mean, I think the people coming down with COVID, I think,
Oh, that might have been, I'm sorry.
no, that was, it was, I think that was the main thing where we had to think quickly, because we didn't have the luxury of saying, okay, we'll take 5 days off and they can recover, or things like that. So we lost actors, had the department. The So there was a point where, for example, our script supervisor came down with COVID, and me and Rachel were doing continuity for 5 days while we're shooting. So it was those kind of things that were due to the circumstances
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we were living in. And I mean, we shot it at the tail end of, I mean, we shot in, gosh, May 2021.
Oh yeah.
So there wasn't really, I mean, that it wasn't like during the pandemic. We still did COVID tests and we were masked up and everything, but people still came down with it. And I think that was the main obstacle, let's say, that we faced, where we had to constantly
Oh yeah, absolutely.
fingers crossed, and then think on our feet, and who could do that also. So
Oh, right, right.
while this person recovers and things like that.
Hmm. One of the things I really like about you three being together is that there's this sort of is it declension? It's like with grammar, but basically it's like contained is Franklin's film in a lot of ways. Less contained is Fremont, and then even less contained, because it's a road movie, is Marissa's. And I wonder, like, logistics and location, if you could talk just a little bit about how you navigate those things, or what it meant to like sort of make the choices you did about place, in terms sort of both. I mean, me, I want to hear about place in that kind of literary way, but I also want to hear about place in a more logistical way, if there are things that you discovered or were intentional about. And, all three of you feel free to
Yeah,
do.
you guys have to tell me how you did it, because I couldn't imagine like doing what we did in one location and then taking that like across the country in some in some regard. But like how, because both of your films involve characters traveling, like taking a journey.
Yeah,
Right?
I'll say real quick for mine, like it was based off of the road trip that I was doing a lot from Texas to South Dakota. And I tried to keep the locations of where that road trip was happening. I tried to keep them pretty accurate without, taking the crew too far. But like a lot of I mean, in this town where I am in Spearfish, there was like, we did cheat like a lot of the locations, like the gas station and there's sections all around here that could work for the whole South Dakota portion, and for like a lot of, so we did kind of keep it more localized, even though, like, what's the right way to say it? Like it was all in the areas where the road trip happened, but tried to keep it local to certain places within that, so that we weren't like, doing the entire road trip multiple times a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, does that sort of answer?
Yeah, no, and actually I mean, that is a like way of problem solving. It's like, okay, so you have this sort of spine, and then you have these places, but there were more places, but you like sort of located them. I mean, I actually think that's really interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have been possible for us to continue driving through everywhere, but there were enough places at certain locations where we still kept it very, because I wanted it to be real and true
Right,
to
it has the texture. Yeah.
yeah, to what it was. Like I didn't want to, shoot in a different state that was like defeat the whole purpose of the film. So yeah, so we just tried to find the places along that sort of line.
Yeah, we cheated as well. I think we because in the story they're supposed to drive from Fremont to Bakersfield, and we didn't shoot. We didn't drive 3 hours to shoot that scene. We shot it very close to Fremont, on a road that looks similar to the heading down to the Central Valley. Mm-hmm. So the gas station, the garage, which is supposed to be in Fresno in the story, is also just right outside Fremont.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so we didn't have time to go out there.
The two locations that stand out to me in your guys' films, one, I mean the obviously the cookie factory, was that a real place that you had found? And then to that end as well, I want to ask about the wedding as well for Unknown Country. Did you have that cookie place? Was that already like known? Did you already know about that?
Yeah. I mean, we initially, me and Carolina, the co-writer, and Marjana, the initial producer, Marjana lived in the Bay Area. Me and Carolina did not. We were visiting her, and she took us many years ago to the Fortune Cookie Factory in Chinatown in San Francisco. And we just went inside, and I was completely blown away by the way it looked. Like, all the machinery was the same as, since the 50s. And me being a superficial director, I just thought this looks incredible. This has to be in a film somehow. I had no idea story-wise how that was going to work out. But Carolina, it was her idea, and said, "Oh, if Donya, the lead, she works in the Fortune Cookie Factory." But then what happened was that we also went to Oakland, Chinatown, and we saw the cookie factory there, and we ended up shooting in the Oakland one. There was no set decoration; it's literally as was. I mean, we couldn't close down the factory for the 5 days we were in there. So when we yelled cut, they started making cookies, and then when we were rolling, they stopped the machinery. So it was 5 days like that. They were making cookies while we were shooting, and so yeah, it was an actual location that looked pretty much exactly like that.
Yeah, that's like all of our locations were live locations. So like, or I don't know if that's a word or how you talk about it, but they weren't closed for us. They were all going, yeah, doing business per usual. But that's kind of, like how you're talking about finding the cookie factory. Like that's also like what this was finding location. Like the people in the locations came also, a lot of them came first before the whole idea of the movie. So, every place that you see where someone was working was where they worked, and, sort of was a lot of what inspired the film. What did you ask me a question?
Oh, just about the wedding.
The wedding. Yeah. So for the wedding, when Lainey and I were originally talking about this wild idea that wasn't a film yet, she was like, "Well, I'm thinking of getting married. Do you think we could put my wedding in the movie?" And I think she was excited to get like some free footage if we actually end up making this movie. And so I was like, I don't know, like maybe we can think about, like, let's try to think of like what we could use it for. And so, and this is over like, a couple glasses of wine, and we're like, oh, well, we don't have a reason that Lily's gonna leave. Like maybe we just like make that the reason that she leaves home, like instead of just like finding the photo. So yeah, then we planned her wedding for the movie, and we found, like, she didn't have a location where she wanted to do the wedding. So we found that church and just scheduled her real wedding. And that was actually the first day of filming, like with, Lily and everybody. And it was her real wedding. And it was like -20 degrees in there. And it was very emotional day. But anyways, yeah. That's that scene. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful. I always worry. It's like, oh, we're going to have this like long time and between Q&A and then questions. And of course we don't. And I want to keep going. But luckily these people have really good questions for you. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and start asking some of these questions that I think have been really smart. And sometimes we've kind of touched on them, but I still feel like it's worth returning to just to be a little bit more specific. So one of them I'm going to start with is just a question about, and all of you can answer this in whatever fashion you'd like, or if you'd like. What kind of fiscal constraints? I mean, did any of the sort of finances change, force you to make sort of changes in your script due to budget constraints? I felt like we touched on that, but I just think it's really worth it. This is a screenwriter wondering, and I think that's in a director wondering, I think, and that's pretty helpful just to hear, like, did you have to sort of reimagine certain kinds of things or cut things and reshape them in any way?
I'll say quickly to that for our film, which might be a little more specific, but we kind of believed that the no funding to having some funding by the end ended up kind of working for the story. Like, as the film didn't really know what we were doing as much, Lily doesn't really know what she's doing as much in the beginning of the film. It's a little more open, it's a little more gritty. And then as the film knows itself better was when we started to get in a little more money and a little more money. And if you sort of compare the end of the film to the beginning, that the journey of the funding and of the film and of on his character kind of ended up aligning, which we didn't plan for. But it's just one of those things that when you are making a film, to kind of, the lesson learned is probably to just be open to what that funding might look like, because it ended up working for our film. Not that it would work every time, but like did that make sense, or did that sound too?
No, it made an elegant sense, no less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For us, I just wrote the script with the idea that we were going to get like the bare minimum amount of money for this film. So I wrote the script with that in mind. That's why it's 3 locations, 4 characters, and why it's so minimalist. That was kind of the idea. We sort of said, okay, what's the smallest amount of money you can make a movie for? And still have it be like get distribution and whatnot, and that was our goal. So yeah, it's a small budget. We kind of just anticipated that, so we didn't really make any changes to the script along the way. It's very it's very much the same script from the first draft.
Franklin, just a little adjacent question.
Sure.
Which is, I think I read that you'd said something about this sort of notion of like measuring twice and cutting once kind of thing, which I feel like sort of fits into this sort of idea of not having, that you anticipated some things, including a very minuscule budget, and therefore in anticipating it, you were crafting something that could work with that budget. So, I mean, also the idea of sort of being able to do some of that, thinking ahead of the game served you well? So you feel like it served you well?
Absolutely. I envy the filmmakers out there that are able to kind of improvise more and kind of run and gun. I've done a little bit of that, but I feel as though I have more fun when I kind of can know everything initially, and do all of that prep work, do all of that pre-production process, have that sort of security of I know exactly how we're going to film this, and you can be more efficient and conservative with coverage that way, which saves you money because you're not on set as long. But at the same time as that, you still have to be open to inspiration. You still have to give yourself enough freedom and enough time to like make those discoveries, which is why I also believe heavily in rehearsals. That gives you the time to work with the actors, discover things. Maybe there's something that needs to change because of a creative idea that one of the actors has. But yeah, I definitely am a measure twice, cut once kind of person, especially being the editor. Knowing how I'm going to cut it together was very, very helpful. So lots of shot lists, lots of little maps of the set and where characters were blocked and whatnot. We were very, very meticulous about that. That's just how I like to roll. And also because I knew that this was, an hour and a half of people talking in a room. So you had to keep people engaged, and you had to you can't use the same camera angle over and over again. You got to find dynamic ways to tell the story visually. Even if it's just 3 people in a room, you feel different when you cut to a profile versus if you cut to an overhead versus if you're shooting from over there. And all of that matters. So we just tried to be meticulous, and we had plenty of time to do it as well. So yeah, thank you.
Babak, did yours and Carolina? I'm sorry, I'm making her name up. What is your co-writer's name? Okay,
Carolina.
Good. Did you have to do any reformulating, any rewriting in relationship to dictated by budget versus dictated by your own sort of sense of what the film should be, right? Because I feel like, oh, people rewrite all the time, but were there rewrites that had to happen as sort of the sense of like being, that you had to because of financial constraints?
On this one, no.
Right.
On this one, no. I have had that experience actually on the bigger budget film where I had to cut 17 pages of the script like 2 days before the shoot because suddenly things were getting expensive. But on this one, no. If anything, I mean, there were things that we wrote and that I shot that I got rid of in the editing. Um, so um, so I don't know if I had thought more as an editor while I was shooting, probably could have saved us a few days. but but I think and some money, of course. But yeah, so luckily on this one we didn't. I mean, when we wrote the film, we didn't think, okay, we have this much money for the budget of the film, and we didn't know what the budget was
Right.
going to be. But we just wrote the story that we wanted to write, and then but once you're writing it and you're reading it, you know roughly, okay, this is not going to be an extortion amount of money because the story doesn't, it's pretty contained. There's not
Yeah.
that many locations. There's no car chases and things like that going on. So you kind of, yeah. I think, I mean, like a bit different to Franklin. I mean, I never rehearse with actors. I don't even audition. So it's basically just a conversation with them before casting them. Most of the time I've worked with non-professionals. This time actually was my first time that I had a mixture of professionals and non-professionals.
Oh,
And so the idea that I would need time, for example, in a room with them beforehand, I never thought that way because it's just not the way I work. But that also allows me to have more time to shoot, as in like more takes and stuff while I'm shooting.
Yeah. This is a teeny adjacent question based on your answer there, which is, I think I read someplace where you sort of knew on a gut level you wanted to be the editor for Fremont. So why and I don't know why. I mean, I like what is why how did you know? Why did that sort of feel different than other times? I mean, it's a big role to take on. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I did it with my first feature. I edited that myself too. The second and third one, no, I worked with an editor. This one I knew because I don't know, there was a specific tone and rhythm to it that I was very specific on in my head, in my thoughts. Although I just said I cut quite a bit in the editing of what we shot, but I did know, for example, the rhythm and the pace. It was very specific, and I just again, it's a question of why did I decide to choose black and white. I don't have a real eloquent or intellectual reason for why I decided. I thought I would edit this. It just in my gut, I felt I need to edit this one.
Well, I love that. I mean, that's how you talk to your non-professional professional actors. Why would you not like sort of keep developing that as one of your sort of, skill sets, is your gut kind of thing? I think that seems to make a lot of sense. So I have this question. Anyone can chime in, I believe, in your bite-size shoot as your funded approach. Okay, I'm sorry. And this is someone where it's almost like I should have them read it. Did you pay yourself? Or was all the money going to rentals, logistics, et cetera? I'm a director and struggle to know when it's good to pay myself and when not.
I paid myself a tiny little bit when we got in money at the end, but mostly back end. Mostly had everyone get back end points, but with that, it just. I think with these types of projects, if you're going into them trying to make money off of them, you hope that one day you get there in your career, but you can't really hope that from the beginning with something like this that's going to happen. But I was happy that I was able to pay myself a little bit once we did get money. It made me feel like I actually did a job.
Understood.
Yeah.
Franklin, you were nodding, I believe is the right way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much the same for us for our initial proof of concept section. Yeah, that was my director of photography and I just kind of did that in the hopes that we would, kind of banking on that. But everybody else in the cast and crew, we made sure got paid. That's what that money was for, that initial small amount that we raised. Then once we got a production company involved, yeah, I was able to get like just the bare minimum just to like feed myself for the days that we were shooting. And then, but still, that was just for directing. So and a lot of people deferred payments on pretty much most of post-production, editing, sound, color, all of that. There were a lot of people that deferred payments for points on the back end. And again, yeah, I agree with Marissa. If you're getting into this because you're sort of anticipating on making a lot of money, I'm the wrong person to talk to about that. I think making your first feature, making an independent feature, is a great way to earn credibility in the industry, which could potentially allow you to work on other projects that maybe pay. But for me, I made this film because I felt compelled to share an idea. And maybe one day that'll pay off. But for now, I'm happy with just being able to have made it.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't pay myself. I mean, others paid me. My producers paid me.
That's perfect sense. I love it. It's like, you're right. I went into the cookie jar and like
And it's a good question though, because it is a confusing, it's a confusing question that you hear a lot of people, like a lot of people like us try to figure out, like,
oh yeah,
is it okay if we get paid a little bit? Like, are we meant to be working for free? Are we allowed to get paid? Like, those are questions that like you actually, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just was saying, like, you hear that a lot amongst
I think people are very confused about projects that are led by passion sometimes and creativity, and therefore, why should those people get paid like living wages? Why should those people, I mean, it's like, why should you get paid if you're the director? I mean, it's like, because we have like some very confused ideas about the work, it's like, and so I think it's interesting to have a group of people that are listening to this who want to do the work or are doing the work, knowing that, there's an ethics of budget. I mean, to me, there's probably, and I wonder for you all too, it's like, is there an ethics of budgeting? I mean, of thinking about like what a budget is. I would like to think there probably is, especially with independent filmmakers who know that you have to value the work.
Absolutely. I think, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, I just was going to quickly say, like, something that's important to me too is that on each project, like, because I have been working with the same group of people forever, that like, even if it's just by a little bit, everybody's growing what they're making, even if it's by a slight amount, like on each project, like that we're not kind of like doing this and then doing like that there is like a upwards sort of climb for everybody that feels, that validates the work that we've all been doing together for years.
But I do think that filmmaking, like many other industries, is deeply unfair in the sense of, I don't know, us as directors, if you make the film that you like and God willing, the audience appreciates it and reacts positively to it, there is a sense of glory, right? So the money may be terrible, but there is glory. But you see so many people on the film set who don't experience that glory at all. I can hands down say, like, an assistant director on a film does far more work than a director does. I mean, an assistant director on a film set is by far, I mean, the level of mental and physical work that they do on a film set is insane. And there is no glory in that. They don't get paraded in festivals and say, here's the assistant director. They don't get interviewed by journalists saying, here's the assistant director. They don't get flown to Sundance or Cannes or Venice or Berlin. Do you see what I mean? So much like any other industry, there is, I have to say, just that dirtiness to it as well, which I think is plainly wrong. In the way people are acknowledged, both financially and on just a level, the sheer volume of work that they do. I've made 4 feature films as a director. I'm constantly in awe, and I've worked with 4 different assistant directors on them, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted of how they actually do this, and the amount of nonsense they put up with, the amount of egos, the amount of defending directors, or just trying to like make sure the directors are protected, making sure people are on time, making sure the heads of department aren't at each other's throats, all these things, and nobody hears about them. Well, me as a director, yes, I'm like, hey, I made a film. I'm going to the Spirit Awards. I'm doing, is
beautiful.
Yeah, I would say to any independent filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers out there wanting to get into it, I would highly recommend trying to find producers that are going to value your time, value your work. But at the same time, I still feel like the most important thing, as Babak was saying, was you yourself need to value the crew and the cast's time and their work. That's the most important thing, because like you said, you might get recognition, you're going to get articles, you're going to get opportunities like this, but you need to make sure that the cast and the crew are getting paid fairly. I think that's, to me, that should be like the baseline ethics of independent filmmaking. And also I feel as though if you can fight for that and achieve that for your next film, you now have kind of a sort of precedence to say like, hey, listen, this is how much we were paid for our first film, right? This is how much my crew was paid. We're not going below that. No one's doing a favors. Like their time and their work are going to be valued fairly. And that might be a hard thing to fight for. There might be opportunities that some doors that close because of that, or some relationships with producers that may not succeed because of that. But I still think that is a very important thing for filmmakers to fight for. And so I completely agree with what you guys said.
And that's like whatever the crew says, like on TUC, like we didn't have our crew was so small that we didn't have some of those jobs. But whoever was there, whoever was present, however small it was, those people getting paid. And if it wasn't that right then when we had money, making sure that happened later, like making sure that those people, because that's how there isn't a film, that's why interrupting to try to say, shout out, different crew members, like you can't, it's so weird that it's such a director's medium when you have like this insane collaboration between these groups of people, and obviously it comes in different forms, but yeah, valuing the people that you're working with can't be overstated.
Right. I have a question from Matt. If you're comfortable sharing, how much of your personal finances did you have to sacrifice to make your film? Do you have did you take money out of retirement? Do you have a lot of credit card debt? I love that, because I think we all have this image of people just paying for their films on a card or a few cards, and then having a breakthrough, right? It's like, all right, but I think I would just add that one little extra thing, which is in the sacrificing. No, that's a great question. I don't have to like gild that lily.
I took out a credit card. I didn't put that much on it. I think there was about 10 on it. But I mean, maybe 15. It was probably 10 it wasn't too much though, but I did when I got married, right after I got married, my husband drove me to Dallas and was like, you need to raise that money, but now that debt is mine. Even though it wasn't that much, he was like, you have to raise. So that was like when I stayed in Dallas and tried to do a bunch of meetings with investors and like finally got that money in when we had like 80-90% of it shot, was because I hadn't told him about that slight amount of
Oh, those shared finances in there.
Yeah.
Sometimes they really do like get you to do the right thing.
But I will say though, for that, just for filmmakers that are like, when there really isn't a way to figure out how to start it, like that credit card had a year, like it was a year where you didn't have to pay interest. And so there was a year that we had to pay that back without interest. And I pulled it off. And that is a tool, if, you know, as long as you're not gonna owe millions of dollars, that is a tool to be able, if you just need, you know, little things here and there to be able to pull off making your film, that is worth looking into when you're really starting from scratch and don't have any way to pay for anything. But no retirement. Didn't dip into retirement.
You saw you think about that? I didn't. I mean, I did. Yeah, I messed up my credit a long time ago. I didn't getting a credit.
I'm sorry.
No, it's no, I didn't. I didn't put any of my own money in the film, and I didn't. And I did get paid to work on this film. But of course, you know, it takes a long time to make a film, so the amount you're paid stretched out over that period doesn't amount to an awful amount. But yeah, I mean, I didn't. Retirement, I guess it's called pension here in the UK, right? Is that what it?
Yeah.
No.
Nobody has a pension anymore, but yeah.
No, I didn't do any of that, and I didn't take out a credit card or anything.
I know, I feel like so guilty saying that out loud, but it really wasn't that much.
No, that's what people do. That's what I mean. That's like a.
That was like, if it wasn't for AFS, those grants and that little bit, like that little bit on a. Sorry, now I feel like I'm like talking to my parents.
No. Don't be sorry. At all, no. And in fact, because someone wanted to know if that's what you guys did, and one of you did, that's super helpful. And that you paid it back is, well, you know, and why you had to pay it back is also, I hope, something they heard, because there, you know, there is a lot of ways in which we invest, right? That's just gambling on yourself. However, when you become like a couple with shared finances, gambling on yourself has to sort of like, you know, involve the other person going, sure, go ahead, you know, potentially, or not. You can figure it out. So I kind of love the answer for the like emotional complications of all that stuff.
Okay,
Desiree Middleton had asked, Middleton had asked a question that I don't want to forget. I'm a screenwriter looking to shoot my first feature. How did you go about finding your crew? And did you start out doing shorts and then jump into features?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I did about 10 years of short films. I was not great at submitting them to festivals. I had kind of like one of my first short films I ever made was like 30 minutes long, and I thought it was great. So I like sent it. I spent like all of my money sending it to festivals and didn't get into a single one. And I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm just like I guess it's just I'm not good at making films. Little did I like come to realize like that for festivals. I don't know if someone had asked about like submitting to festivals. I think I saw one of the questions, but I just didn't even think about how festivals are trying to fill an hour and a half long block of shorts. So they're not going to pick a film that takes up 1/3 of that time. They're going to try and pick as many kind of small films as possible. And if they find out that they have extra time, they're going to try and like fit in any like 5-minute films that they can. So making your film shorter, your short shorter, can actually give you a really big advantage in festivals. But I just been making lots of shorts, and someone I think also asked about like how do you find crew people? You just work with people you haven't worked with before, the people that you really like working with, the people that you vibe with. You keep working with them and you build relationships, and you keep like communication like consistent. And I've just over the course of those 10 years. What now?
Uh-oh.
Oh. I think you're muted. What did you say?
Oh, I thought I was muted when I said, boys, shut up. My dogs are barking. I'm so sorry. I'm like, wait.
Shut up, Franklin. We're good.
Oh my God. You should have known since I said plural boys, I was not talking to you. I said, boy, shut up.
All right, but now they've stolen the show. What are your dogs' names?
We have a standard poodle named Hank and a terrier nut job mix named Jax. So I am sorry, everybody. They're giving a great answer. Boy, shut up. Sorry, all of you.
No, that was great. I've totally lost my train of thought now, but I'm like,
you talk about your crew and how you like it develop, and I actually think it helps sort of figure out also who you were able to bring in to work on the film and why you had relationships to all those people.
Absolutely. Just 10 straight years since high school of working with the same people and cycling through people. And I guess just to answer the question originally, which I'm now like for blanking on, it was about making shorts. Yes. If you have one of these, you have everything you need to make a short film. So you could write the script, you can send it to your friends, you can shoot it, you can upload it to YouTube. It's never too early. You're never too inexperienced to just start making stuff. And you're going to start by making a lot of stuff that may not be very great or festival worthy. That's okay. I don't know about you guys, but I started off making some really cringy, not so great stuff. But it's through that experience and through that kind of learning and trial by error and problem solving that you eventually start making stuff that gets people's attention. So yeah, made a lot of shorts.
How you meet your people, is through those experiments and you no matter how small a project is or weird or terrible, like you can tell if you vibe with the people that you're working with, and so that's how you start to build that. So yeah, and that's how I built the people that I work with.
Rebecca, would you have to have the last word or the penultimate word
on the shorts thing?
On the shorts thing, or how you found your crew, because you've had a few different crews and you even said that you had
I've worked, exactly. I mean, I don't think I've worked with the same person on 2 films.
Wow.
No, I lie. With an editor, I've worked on 2 films. With a sound designer, I've worked on 2 films. But I've changed it around. I went to film school. I made a short, and then made my first feature quite quickly after that short. But it was, but before I had made that short, I kind of had that idea for the feature in my mind, and I used the short as a way of kind of trying at least to get the mistakes out of the way before I went into the feature. Although I did make many mistakes on the feature, even like as hard as I tried, but.
And there you have it. That's how you learn. Yeah. You three, thank you so much. I actually enjoyed this enormously. I hope that our audience did too. And I'm sorry, because I feel like I robbed us of one question with the boy shut up thing. But anyway,
best part of the love that.
And thanks again, and congratulations on these beautiful films. I think that Film Independent let people know how to see them. Please see them. They are wonderful, and I hope that you have a great time and that you're all planning on being at the Spirit Awards. So
thank you very much for having
wonderful.
us.
Thanks again.
Looking forward to meeting you guys in person there.
Yeah, right on.
Thank you so much.
Lisa. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.